What's going on, guys? Same Circle Wrestling here. We got an interesting show for you for the most part. We might have Gary show up eventually. That's a big might. But for now, we're going to just kind of start off the show talking about Global Force Wrestling, which is an upstart promotion by Jeff Jarrett, who you might remember him from the Attitude Era-ish. And he is starting up a new promotion. He's got some decent talent coming in. We just saw a couple new guys get signed. I think it was either today or yesterday that you might know. And we also talked about on the last show, the Young Bucks kind of floating around looking for somewhere to go. They've decided to sign with GFW, and Tim has a little bit more info as far as the roster goes.
Yeah, of course. Global Force Wrestling, the upstart by Jeff Jarrett, is doing something a little bit abnormal. They're having their first ever show in Las Vegas in an arena, which is very, very interesting for a promotion to have their first event in an arena, because that's kind of ballsy. He's putting all of his chips on the table, and you know what? We might as well try to take that in. But, of course, they just announced that Scott Hall and Shelton Benjamin will be on their roster, joining other names such as Jimmy Rave, Trent Beretta, Takaki Watanabe, PJ Black, which PJ Black is someone who's very familiar to us if you've been watching WWE programming. He wrestled for WWE as Justin Gabriel, so that's where he fell. But he joins the likes of Davey Boy Smith Jr., Carl Anderson, Doc Gallows, Chris Madetsky, who was Chris Masters from WWE, Quinn Moose, who was Moose from Ring of Honor, Thea Trinidad, who was Rosita in TNA, Lyad Tapa from TNA, the Young Bucks, which Seth, you talked about. Great pickup for them to have a solid tag team join the group. Cliff Compton, who is Domino from WWE, Sanjay Dutt, Tyrus, who you might remember as Brodus Clay from WWE, Jigsaw, the new Heavenly Bodies, who is Desirable Dustin and Gigolo Justin. Sounds a little bit like Juggalo Force Wrestling guys to me. I'm not quite so sure. The Hot Shots, Cassidy James and Chase Stevens, Luke Hawks, Jamin Olivencia, Chuck Taylor, and Lance Hoyt. So, I mean, they have a solid roster of guys that we've heard about, pretty much underutilized in their promotions from time to time. So we'll see what Jeff Jarrett can do with these guys and make a conceivable standalone product that can possibly rival some of these upstarts in some of the, I guess, undercarded wrestling groups like Ring of Honor and TNA, and maybe even challenge WWE. What do you guys think?
I was wondering where the hell Chris Masters went, first of all. And I'm interested in how their production's going to be, because I'm very excited for what's to come as far as, because I trust Jeff Jarrett for the most part, because he's got a lot of experience, and with that roster you can't really go wrong if you can work your way into some good storylines.
Really, it all depends on the booking and the production values, really, because they certainly have the roster to compete. I think they can at least compete on the level of some of the higher level indies. And if they play their cards right, and if they have enough money behind them, I could easily see them on a TNA level, maybe even surpassing TNA, and being in that whole, I don't call it a wasteland, but that whole unoccupied territory in the gulf between
the minor
TNA, Lucha Underground, and your WWE.
Yeah. I think basically what they want to shoot for is a little bit better than TNA, because TNA is getting dragged through the mud for 10, 20 different reasons. You can, throw a dart at the board and come up with something that logically pins them down. But if they can hit any kind of success, the Lucha Underground is kind of stormed in and just taken over, then, I think there's going to be some long-term shelf life for this promotion if they can keep, all their checks and balances and payroll in line, which has been the biggest problem for wrestling promotions in the past couple of years.
The sad thing is that technically speaking, TNA in the ring isn't that bad. And you get so much shit they get so much shit rather, because of the things that happen outside the ring with the promotion and negotiations and things along those lines. So it's kind of sad that TNA doesn't, have a following that it could potentially have.
Well, TNA's biggest problem is right now it's on Destination America, which is the station few people have and even fewer can find. And right now it's slotted on Friday nights at 9 o'clock. You know what? I mean, SmackDown did great, but it didn't do amazing on a Friday night time slot. And Dixie Carter and staff mentioned that they plan in June on moving their show to Wednesdays on Destination America in an effort to try and chip into the market and kind of get a better grasp on their ratings, since people like to do things on Friday nights, especially in the summertime. They have other stuff to do than sit at home and watch wrestling. But Seth, you and I joked about this. Bill, I'm sure you can chime in. Is moving to Wednesday even a smart idea for TNA?
I didn't think it was, and because honestly, right now you already have 2 hours of programming as far as wrestling goes with Lucha Underground and NXT. So who's gonna want to sit there for 4 hours and watch all 3 shows on a Wednesday night?
Yeah, and Wednesday, like Seth said, it's clearly held down. I mean, you have the NXT Lucha Underground combo, and Lucha Underground even makes NXT look pretty bad in comparison. So having Lucha Underground as your lead-in, I really don't think is going to be a sound strategy for TNA. Exactly. I personally would much rather see them, if they have to leave Friday on Tuesday nights. That's total dead air as far as wrestling is concerned.
Exactly. And Bill, the point you hit on, I hit on that with Seth. That's exactly, Tuesday is the night they should aim for, because you have main event, but you can't watch that in America. So you have people who want to watch wrestling. They get their Raw on Monday, they get their Lucha and NXT on Wednesdays, SmackDown on Thursdays, but they have nothing to satiate that need on a Tuesday. That would have been the perfect slot.
How are you going to compete? They know Lucha Underground's up and coming. They know that it's bringing in a lot of viewers, most likely. I don't know exactly what the views are like, but I'm assuming that, they're growing pretty well, because there's been a lot of talk about them. Maybe it's just in our group we've been talking about them, but still.
Oh no, Lucha's everywhere. They're getting to the point where they're starting to get note on a lot of the forum websites that we use to get our information and kind of share along with our Facebook and Twitter feeds. Lucha is slowly breaking into that niche. And the fact that it's a lot of AAA guys, it's really starting to help remind us that there's a thriving group of luchadors in Mexico who are doing amazing work, that are just looking for an outlet. And, Lucha's helping bridge those two groups.
And that's exactly the problem, is that they're becoming more and more popular. So why would you have a 9 o'clock show that goes for 2 hours after a show that's 1 hour of phenomenal programming and expect people to sit there for another hour as well to watch NXT? I mean, you already know that everybody's going to watch these 2 hours of programming. At least I do every week. So I'm definitely not looking forward to either sitting there for another 2 hours, or I'll probably end up watching Impact if I do, somewhere down the line later in the week.
Yeah. Another side note to that point, I can watch 3 hours of Raw and still be left wanting more, but with that 1-2 punch of Lucha Underground and NXT, I'm burnt out by the end of that 2 hours. There's just so much action that I can't see how anyone's going to be led into watching TNA by this move at all.
Like, literally, right now, Wednesday night is the new Monday night.
Especially when you have the choice to go up against two different promotions, and that they're both an hour long, so you can feasibly watch them both on a Wednesday night. But all of a sudden you throw a 2-hour show in there, and the pacing to TNA is so awkward to me that trying to take that in, at a 9 to 11 o'clock hour on a Wednesday is just really tough. End up watching it on YouTube the next day, which doesn't help TNA with ratings and doesn't help anybody else with their viewership. So, I mean, I think they're doing it in the best interest, but they did it a little bit wrong.
It's just not a good idea. Let's just leave it at that.
I agree. So, same. So let's hit up NXT. Quite an interesting show. I think it was, the second show after the ESPN E60 aired about, life in NXT. So It's a little bit different of a beast when you look back at it, seeing how all these guys work, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week to try and build this product. But it opened up with Solomon Crowe versus Baron Corbin. Not a very long match. What did you guys think about it?
I'm just not a fan of Baron Corbin because they don't let him do a whole lot. So it's interesting that number one, that they paired those two together and that they let Baron Corbin take it. But I mean, again, he does have that match at TakeOver with Rhino, so you do want to make him look strong, and he doesn't lose, obviously. So it's just kind of questionable to me that they put him in the ring with Sami Callihan, aka Solomon Crowe.
But he's injured. But I was reading online that I think, from people's understanding, Solomon Crowe has lost interest in the NXT and Triple H. I believe that they've kind of moved on from him already because, he came out and he made that statement after the last TakeOver, but you really haven't seen him since. And I know he's injured now, but I just don't understand why he doesn't have a storyline or a legitimate feud. He was sent out there for a squash against Baron Corbin, which was just a setup to Rhino.
Yeah, and they could be waiting for talent to, number one, come up from NXT, and number two, have, people coming up to NXT to feud with him, potentially. But, it's hard really to tell because they haven't booked him very well.
Yeah, it's really a shame that it doesn't appear that they're going to end up doing much with him because, they gave him what is, on paper, a very rich gimmick that has, in itself, tremendous potential for storytelling and even some devices to bring in some special effects, and it's almost
unique, too.
It could be a modern take on a supernatural gimmick, the sorts of The Undertaker almost.
Yeah.
And yet they just haven't developed his character at all. The look he debuted with in the dark matches against Kalisto that I know some of us have seen, I feel like that was a far better look for the gimmick they were trying to give him.
Exactly. That was way cooler, I thought.
It really just comes off as they sort of botched everything they could botch with him. They haven't featured him on TV much, which is more understandable with the wealth of talent they have down there. And it really just comes off that he's been lost in the shuffle, and it is a terrible shame. He's not my first pick to have someone you'd send out for a squash match, but given what little they're doing with him, I can see why they did it. I just can't say I'm happy about it.
We've said it a million times, the booking kind of sucks as far as WWE is concerned, which is a good thing because you have a lot of new promotions coming up around this time, so talent's going to go to those promotions and have a much better chance of showing what they can do. And the problem is that, you have a lot of guys treading water, as we say, and WWE doesn't seem to either bring them up or down in the power rankings.
Yeah, and it's kind of a struggle to see moving forwards because you want to see a guy like Solomon Crowe or Sami Callihan, no matter how you put it. You want to see him succeed in NXT, but you also want to see Baron Corbin succeed because although he's kind of been given the short end of the stick with where his feuds are and what his character is, but you want to see something more than a 2-minute squash match.
Yeah, and the crowd was chanting boring during that match, and it's because every single Baron Corbin match is the same thing, and it really doesn't go past 3 minutes.
Baron Corbin, what is there other than a tall guy? He's maybe done one actual move outside of the End of Days the entire time he's been on TV. He doesn't cut promos. He just stands there and looks intense, brawls with some dudes, and hits his finisher.
Yeah. It's like where are you? You're not displaying your talent, and they're not letting you display the talent.
Yeah, and there's even reports coming out of dark matches and house shows that he's capable of putting on some good matches. I personally haven't seen anything to indicate that, but that is the word on the street.
That's the bird is the word. So other than that, we saw Sasha Banks squash a jobber, Carmella stand up and defeat Alexa Bliss. No, Alexa Bliss won.
It wasn't a jobber, though. It was black shorts.
Yeah, okay, she doesn't have her real name, Jobber. Alexa Bliss beat Carmella, and then Carmella stood up to Blake and Murphy, saying that she's SAWFT soft, and she's got her boys, and they're going to take the titles off them at TakeOver, or however you want to bill her accent. But, I mean, those two matches were pretty not that important. Do you guys agree?
I like that they're pushing Blake and Murphy as, like, creepy guys. Because
there's not a whole lot else to do with them, realistically.
Yeah. And who else has that gimmick, you know?
Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just it could be a lot cooler, but I think they dumb it down too much to try and fit it into an hour, so we don't get to see their full range of capabilities. But moving on, we get the tag team match with Tyler Breeze and Adam Rose taking on Hideo Itami and Finn Balor. Although it was an 11-minute match, but it was a tag team match, so it wasn't that extravagant. But from that, we see Tyler Breeze clearing the ring. He gets the pinfall. What do you think about Tyler Breeze moving forward to TakeOver? You know what I think. I've been saying for the past couple of weeks, you need to get this guy in the main roster because that's a guy with a gimmick and a simple moveset that could pay off on the top ring. What do you guys think of him, pretty much ruling the day with NXT?
Listen, in my opinion, all three of these guys can go to the main roster now and make an impact. But it all depends, again, on how they book it. And I think right now where they are in NXT, this is the perfect place for all three of them. They're all going to show how good they are and that they all deserve to be on the main roster.
Yeah, Tyler Breeze, realistically, as well developed as the gimmick is, a lot of that is because of how well he plays the gimmick. For a long time, he was, back when they had FCW as their developmental territory, he was just this vanilla guy with no real character of his own, and it's actually stunning to see just how good a job he has done of creating and developing this character of Tyler Breeze. Every new nuance he brings into it, like even the selfie stick, I think completely works for him as a character.
If you go to ESPN.com, you can check out the Tyler Breeze segments of the E60. And if you can watch the E60 on NXT, watch it because it's definitely interesting. It gave me a lot of respect for Adam Rose and guys like Corey Graves because it really looks into what they have gone through as far as NXT is concerned.
Yeah, and especially when you look at a guy like Tyler Breeze, his original character wasn't a character. It was just, a normal white guy who's got a decent build and can wrestle, I guess, coherently, and he doesn't look out of place. But the problem was you couldn't buy into him because that kind of character is a dime a dozen in developmentals and the indies, and even in a way on the WWE roster when you look at guys like Curtis Axel.
There's nothing to latch onto.
Exactly, and the Tyler Breeze character, yes, he's almost identical to Zoolander, but when he's out there, you buy into him believing that he's a male model who thinks he's the hot shit and you can't touch him. And you know what? As much of a heel gimmick as that is, he sells it so well. Like Seth, as you said, or Bill, with the selfie stick and the feathered boots and that thing where he lays on the corner on the turnbuckle and just looks at himself. You know what? As much as I hate those moves, that sells the character, and all of a sudden you don't look at Tyler Breeze, the guy in the ring. You look at Tyler Breeze, the whole, canon of ideals behind him, and you just go, you know what? I can buy into that, as Seth Rollins would say. That's a character that I could latch on to.
The guy's good. Plain and simple. And Tyler Breeze was his character, too, as we saw on the E60. And I think pairing him with Adam Rose was really interesting as well because they do have that same vibe coming from each other. And, to show off Itami and Balor with a guy that's been on the main roster, it was just a good pairing, I thought, for the match.
Yeah, Tyler Breeze and Adam Rose, thematically, they're two gimmicks that work well together, and as it turned out, they actually seemed to work together pretty well and cohesively as a unit, so that's something I wouldn't mind seeing on the main roster. It might even give Adam Rose a little bit more of a direction.
It would give both of them a decent push, I would think, and considering the lack of talent in the tag team division right now, we were talking about that before the show. It's it's relatively shallow as far as tag teams are concerned, especially if Tyson Kidd and Cesaro are breaking up at some point soon. You gotta either get the Ascension back in the picture, or maybe get Tyler Breeze and Adam Rose in the picture.
I will say that we'll talk about this later, but on SmackDown we saw a new turn on Adam Rose that kind of may light a fire on him moving forwards.
We also saw the fact that Curtis Axel is teaming with Sandow as well.
The Macho Mandow.
Yeah, that could be a tag team coming up relatively soon as well.
They're opening up Payback. But before we get to that, we need to hit up Lucha Underground, in which was probably one of the shows I'm disappointed I slept on. This week I decided to check out NXT as it aired rather than watch Lucha Underground, and I was going to catch it the next day. Boy, did I screw that one up, guys.
Yeah, I would say you did, because the opening match was phenomenal. I absolutely loved the opening match, especially the finish. I thought it was great.
Yeah, that match was Aerostar against Jack Evans. We haven't seen Aerostar since his best of 5 series against Drago. And you see Aerostar, him and Jack Evans, who is a AAA guy, but not really seen in Lucha Underground yet. And that was a back and forth. There were some spots in that match I was questioning when the finisher was going to come, because I'm not sure what each of those guys' finishers are, but when you take a guy and you do the small package and a drop, I could almost buy into that being your finisher at any given point, because it screws with my head. I would not want to be in that.
Well, they talked about it on the show this week, and they actually mentioned the fact that, it's something that I've noticed since I started watching Lucha Underground, is that there really is each performer doesn't necessarily have a finish. They really have such a large repertoire of moves where you can finish a guy on, almost any move that comes out of anywhere. Really, I haven't seen any set-in-stone finishers from pretty much anybody besides, maybe El Patron or maybe even Johnny Mundo. I mean, you don't really see that kind of thing in Lucha Underground, and that's one more reason to start watching it, because of the unpredictability factor. Somebody can get pinned at any time.
Yeah, and they touched on that last week in the Alberto and Johnny Mundo match when Alberto finished him with the super kick. But that is something that Alberto did use to win a title in WWE, so that wasn't completely out of character for him. And it is something I would look for Lucha Underground to focus on and try more seriously to establish going forward, now that they've pointed it out.
I do buy into the fact that Johnny Mundo and Alberto El Patron have a rivalry, and Lucha is not afraid to talk about how that rivalry stems from WWE. They don't mention it at all, like WWE by name, but that's 100% whenever they talk about how this is Johnny Mundo's house and Alberto El Patron is new and he needs to watch out and not step on any toes, because Mundo's been there since episode 1 if you look all the way back. So it's cool to see them touch on that history and not make it seem like, oh, these are two guys you've never seen before.
Yeah, and, WWE does seemingly... They know that Lucha's up and coming, because they have mentioned El Rey Network before in their programming, and it's to see that, they know that it's a threat, and that's what's really impressive to me as far as Lucha Underground is concerned.
Yeah, because they tend not to... They try to avoid mentioning some of their competition, and the promotions that they do mention, they really don't seem to try to build heat with as much. They've acknowledged, at least on WWE.com, which isn't even necessarily an extension of the official WWE PR, it does seem to go off the rails from the official message a little bit, but especially Ring of Honor they mention, and they don't really denigrate them at all, because they know very well that that's where they pull a lot of their modern talent pool from. They do try to focus them in a positive light, it seems. TNA, they completely ignore and pretend it doesn't exist. But for them to be outwardly taking shots at El Rey and Lucha Underground, that's something we haven't seen out of them yet. And that is proof that there is a new dynamic in play here.
Well, I mean, look at Vince McMahon. He referred to Angelico as a giant can of Monster. Like, that's how he defined him. He goes, oh, that guy looks like wrestling a Monster Energy can.
It's disgusting because, like, you see what WWE did back in the day to win the Monday Night War, and then it's just like, where, like, because I thought Vince McMahon was, like, the pinnacle. Like, you can't, I expected it to be so much better after WCW went under, and all it's done is gone downhill because there's no competition. So when you have Lucha Underground coming up, it makes them have to push somewhere. It makes them have to pull something out of their back pocket, and you know they have to write good shit.
Yeah, and I guess that moves us into our next match because we do want to kind of speed along here. That was the, I don't know, the 7 medals of something that Dario Cueto had.
The medallions.
Aztec medallions.
Yeah, and that was a match between Killshot, Cage, Sexy Star, which putting a woman in the match just shows how, I guess I want to say feminist, but like a very strong goal that they don't try to separate their divas quite as much.
Yeah, it was really a quite progressive idea. I mean, you're starting to see more of it on the indies, but to see it on a nationally televised program, I mean, it is definitely a step forward in the treatment of women's wrestling.
Yeah, they had them going with also Phoenix, Pentagon Jr., who's my favorite in the group, and King Cuerno and the Mac. And that was just a match that was all over the place. It was just guys taking hits whenever they could. But Phoenix ends up getting the medal out of that. Interesting to see what he can do with that moving forwards.
I thought it was great because it's nice to see Phoenix just, you know, put back in the spotlight again because he has been out of it for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and it's just good to see. We don't know what that's going to entail moving forwards.
Yeah, they haven't really put too much of a focus on him at all since the casket match with Mil Muertes. And to see him reestablished, I mean, it boggles the mind just how many wrestlers they can have in the picture at one time. When WWE, their main problem is that they only really seem to have storylines for your main event scene, a few uppercarders, and then maybe one token storyline for the lower card.
And somewhat for your tag team, and, you know, your minor storyline for your Divas division.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and Phoenix, he gets the medallion. Then we move on to Alberto El Patron against Hernandez, which is a #1 contenders match to take on Prince Puma for the title. That match, back and forth, we know what to expect from Patron and Hernandez. We've seen them as Alberto Del Rio and Hernandez in TNA. That match ended in what we knew was going to be an interference, but we did not know to the level. And Seth, do you want to explain exactly what happened at the end of that match?
Well, it was kind of, I mean, out of nowhere for the most part. El Patron pretty much had control at the end of the match, but Johnny Mundo shows up out of nowhere and attacks him, throws him through Dario Cueto's office, which I thought was awesome. And there's a shot from inside the office. We're actually watching it right now. And Cueto's like mixing a drink and shit. And I think this shit like adds an extra element to these shows where it's so much more intimate because you really have the storyline built into the matches themselves. And I thought it was a good way to go about it because now Johnny Mundo's got a reason to, or El Patron has a reason to go after Johnny Mundo and you know, start a feud there. And Hernandez is going to have a decent match for the title as well. So.
Yeah. And I was impressed with just the number of subtleties that were at play here. I mean, they announced before the match that there would be a winner by pinfall or submission, so you knew going in that there was going to be some sort of interference in the finish. And then I was completely caught off guard by Johnny Mundo attacking Del Rio. The way they played it up in the previous weeks, it wasn't outright face-heel dynamic, but they played it up that Alberto was more of the antagonist towards Johnny Mundo. So it looked like there was the heel dynamic they were going with for Alberto.
Yeah, that's true.
And then they completely turned that on its ear with Johnny Mundo attacking into Alberto. And if you watch Hernandez while Johnny is attacking Alberto, you see he looks a little bit confused, like, what's going on here? Almost disappointed that this fight's being taken away from him. And I feel like that adds into some of the playing up to the crowd he was doing when they were going on with the whole tension between him and Prince Puma. It's like they haven't made Hernandez outright heelish except for a few specific spots. And I wasn't a fan of it at first because I thought they were trying to push him as a full-blown heel, but with these new dynamics, you have to wonder what's going on. I mean, it's Lucha Underground. They don't tend to go full-blown face-heel traditional dynamic, but just the amount of her charisma that Hernandez has shown, and that they're building to a fight between him and probably the purest babyface on the roster, Prince Puma, it really raises the question of what they're going to do with that.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what they do with their title picture moving forwards, because not only what they've done is they've set up what's going to be a killer match between Hernandez and Prince Puma, but now all of a sudden you got Johnny Mundo and Alberto El Patron, who are not going to go quietly into that good night, not to quote John Cena or wherever the hell he got that from. So you automatically have, waiting in the wings, more competition for your champion. And to be honest, we really have not seen too much in the way of competition for Prince Puma. He's been in tag team matches in the Trios Championship. Yes, he had that match against Drago, but I mean, Prince Puma hasn't had to put that on the line in a little bit. So in order to have all of these chips fall into place, I'm excited what the next month of Lucha Underground has to offer us, just to see how all that shakes out.
Yeah, Puma's playing. He's pulling a Blake and Murphy right now.
He's dating the cute girl? What?
Oh yeah, I want to throw this in also because I think it was 2 episodes ago I asked you guys to rank the shows from, best ring work to worst. How would you rank them as far as storyline goes?
In what? Lucha?
All of the promotions that we've been watching.
I think if you have to put them on the table, I'd say Lucha has the best encompassing storyline, as in, a lot of people are involved in a lot of different storylines, and all of them seem to have importance, whether or not you're looking at the Trios title or their heavyweight championship. I mean, you have guys all over the place. You have Phoenix with his medallion. It just seems like everything they're doing there has some kind of significance and importance to the whole picture. I think you got to say NXT after that, because you have enough storylines there, especially when you're still looking at Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, and you still have Rhino and Baron Corbin, as well as Tyler Breeze. He's got to fit in somewhere. That's some kind of a good match, not to mention their women's title or their Divas title has lots of significance and a lot of major players who could factor in on any given week to being a top contender. And then I think you got to look at WWE. I mean, they have their basic formula, and they're going to stick to it from here till whenever else. And, I mean, TNA, it's great, but, I mean, you keep putting the belt on Kurt Angle, and you know you're not going to lose the belt from Kurt Angle. You have the tag teams on the Hardys, and it's hard to sell a promotion and say the Hardys are not your tag team partner or tag team champion, so it's hard to really factor their storyline to having any kind of significance.
See, I'd have to put Lucha Underground at the top naturally for the reasons you stated, and just the format they use gives them, there's more depth of storytelling available to them than to any other promotion going today. Secondly, I think I'd have to put TNA, just because there's actual plot development going on, multiple characters, to a higher degree than WWE or NXT are doing. Third, I'd have to put NXT, only below TNA for the reason that they've been in such a holding pattern lately. There really hasn't been much progress and new storylines going on. It's just continuations of what we've been seeing for the past several months, and for the most part. And at the bottom, I have to put WWE, sadly, as I seem to be doing in the rest of these categories. They have seemed to step it up a tiny bit in the past couple weeks, but there just isn't enough going on there for me to say that they're above anything else going right now of the ones we're ranking.
Yeah, I have to agree with your ranking because I think Lucha, just the fact that these shows are short, really gives you a much better chance of developing storylines because you don't have to stretch for time like Raw does. So I think I'd have to say Lucha, TNA, because TNA does develop stories, and, they're relatively interesting, give or take some of them, but at least they're trying, unlike WWE for the most part. And NXT is good because they do have, 3 or 4 ongoing storylines, even though they only have an hour-long show. And then WWE, hopefully will step it up in the near future. I'm looking forward to Elimination Chamber because there's really no way around Elimination Chamber without being a little bit more interesting. A little bit more brutal. I'm hoping for a little bit of color on a couple guys' faces in the Elimination Chamber. So I hope WWE does step it up. But as far as rankings go, you got to go with Lucha Underground.
Yeah, it's going to be rough building up the Elimination Chamber. I mean, they're only giving themselves 2 weeks after Payback. This whole little section they put themselves in, we got the pay-per-views coming fast and furious. They stuck King of the Ring in there. There's really just so many extracurriculars going on that it's really not helping elevate the pay-per-views at all.
Because we have 2 this month, so,
3. Well, not 3, because NXT is technically in... No, that's this month. But yeah.
Well, yeah, TakeOver.
Oh, yeah, it is
TakeOver's, I guess, technically a pay-per-view in a way.
Because you're gonna have Payback this Sunday, TakeOver on Wednesday. You're gonna have Elimination Chamber 2 weeks after Payback, and then 2 weeks after that, you got Money in the Bank in Columbus, Ohio. So, I mean, they're going to have to fit a lot of stuff in quickly because, I mean, every other Raw is going to be a go-home Raw. So, that's... I don't know. I want to see how it goes. I'm hopeful that maybe they can build something of substance out of this. But I will say, before we get into Raw, SmackDown, and everything else, if Seth Rollins is still the title after any of these events, I think they've flawed some bit of their storytelling.
I think, well, number one, I want to say that we have all kinds of time because I'm pretty sure Gary isn't going to show up.
I just sent him a message because I don't have his number, so I don't know if he's actually going to show up. But I do have to take a piss break soon.
Yeah,
we're
me
about
too.
20 minutes past his ETA, so I'd say at this point it's not looking good.
Yeah, I'm close to a piss break as well. We might try and take a commercial break or something here pretty soon, or we can try and work around it. But I think right now we're just kind of coasting towards the WWE this week.
So do you want to take a quick 5-minute break and then come back and we'll hit up the rest of the show?
That sounds good.
That sounds good to me.
Alrighty.
We'll be right back.
Alright. Love it or list it's on TV. That's pretty good. Oh, anyways, gotta talk about Raw.
Are we still... Are we back from break yet?
Yeah,
I've been recording, man. I don't know.
I don't think there's any more break than we could have taken.
I still wanted to do that, bringing us back in from break thing.
Yeah, go ahead. Back from break, go.
Alright, and we are back at Same Circle Wrestling. I'd like to apologize to our listeners because my lunch this morning featured both pickled eggs and coleslaw, so there's a good chance you're going to be smelling results over the airwaves very soon.
I would rather have the results from your pickled egg or pickled whatever sadness sandwich than what I saw on Raw. Which Raw was confusing because they tried to emphasize your main event at Payback, which is Dean Ambrose against Roman Reigns against Randy Orton and Seth Rollins. You put 3 guys in meaningful matches, and then Cincinnati, Ohio, you have Dean Ambrose opening up the whole freaking thing against J&J Security. which I guess makes sense if you want to make Dean Ambrose look good in his hometown. But we need to remember, WWE fucking hates putting people in their hometown. Not to mention they fucking hate making them look good in their hometown. So why the hell was Dean Ambrose standing tall at the end of Raw is beyond me. Do you guys have a take on that?
See, I have no idea, because I want them to want to push Dean Ambrose, but they don't seem to want to push Dean Ambrose.
They want to push him, but they don't have a reason. Like, if they want to protect Dean Ambrose and they want to protect Roman Reigns, it's hard to push Dean Ambrose outside of anything else.
Yeah, the only real explanation I can find is that they just thought that Dean Ambrose was going to be so over in Cincinnati that it just could not be ignored, because, I mean, as it bared out during the show, Cincinnati is a decently marquee town for the most part. They're going to cheer the good guys, boo the bad guys, go with what they're given. But Dean Ambrose is just so popular as that hometown boy that they didn't think they could do anything else.
I mean, I don't hate it as a Dean Ambrose mark. I've said that on multiple versions of our podcast. I like his character. I like the fact that he's not so much a Daniel Bryan underdog, but storyline-wise, he's a complete underdog because they haven't given him any traction.
Well, that's the thing. I'm a total mark for the character that Ambrose is supposed to have.
That's the thing, too, is that he fades in and out of the character that he is. And I think it's because WWE doesn't know how to book him. And the problem right now is that you have Rollins and Reigns at the top of the title picture. And you also have Lesnar, who is basically just not in the picture at all at this point for some reason. So number one, I want to know when Lesnar's going to come back. Probably not until SummerSlam, right? And, why they can't actually put Dean Ambrose in the top, 5 as far as World Heavyweight Champions goes.
I think a lot of that plays into what they're going to do with him moving forwards, because right now you have the title on Seth Rollins, and that's a very vulnerable title. Because, Seth Rollins didn't win it with any kind of power or gusto. He kind of, as his character would suggest, he slimed his way in at the best possible moment, took advantage of the situation, and he's holding it. Anytime you've seen him with defense, you've seen him come under the grasp of Kane or J&J security. There's not too much that says Seth Rollins by himself can keep and hold that title. So, it makes sense to want to build him as some kind of credible contender holding the title. But I think WWE has put themselves in a corner by saying, okay, you know what? We gave Brock Lesnar the title, and he didn't do much with it for about, 6 or 7 months. He didn't really have any viable contenders outside John Cena. I think this is a good moment to have a relative hot potato with the title. Give it to Dean Ambrose, give it to Roman Reigns, give it to Randy Orton. Make it a tangible object. I don't want to feel like it takes 6 months for us to find a new heavyweight champion.
Yeah. The thing I worry about with Dean Ambrose being thrown into the main event scene is it feels to me like they might be hot-shotting this whole Shield triple threat matchup in order to get that out of the way before SummerSlam, when you inevitably have to do something with Brock Lesnar.
I think they grew accustomed to Brock Lesnar having the belts and having it not change hands. Now they're at the point where the belt can change hands and it'll matter a little bit more. Right now, it's like almost none of these belts matter because they don't change hands. And number one, they don't change hands, especially on weekly shows like Raw or SmackDown. If I saw the belt change, the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, if I saw that change hands on SmackDown, I'd shit a fucking brick. I would shit a brick.
And that's the kicker, is even 6 months ago you were hearing complaints of, the title belts are devalued by how often they were getting bounced around. And now they've gone the completely opposite direction of that, and it's arguably too far in the other direction.
Exactly. Like, it's hard to buy into 5 hours worth of technically free TV if you know in that realm that nobody else is going to get a chance or take that title. And I think, especially with the pay-per-views, the way they're lumped together lately with Payback, Elimination Chamber, and Money in the Bank, I feel like you almost have to bounce that title really quickly. I know I flirt that joke of Dean Ambrose winning it and losing it at Elimination Chamber and then winning Money in the Bank. I mean, that at least gives it a feasible storyline. And I feel like if you have Seth Rollins carry it for the next month and a half, I think you kind of devalue his role, because if you never give him a chance to where he has to fight and get it back, I don't think the Authority still has their power.
Because, like, the worst thing that happens is you have a guy that's a 5-time champion. Or you know, like, the thing about it is you have so many guys that could be there that why would you not pass the belt around a little bit more? There's really no reason, in my opinion, to have it with one person and have it be one title reign. To me, it feels like longevity of a reign is not as important as times one. And that is reflected in things like John Cena and Ric Flair, where you have that record that you're shooting for, and how many times you've acquired the belt versus how long you've carried the belt. And I think really, like, if the belt changes hands a lot more, you have reasons to watch Raw, you have reasons to watch SmackDown, you have reasons to watch in general, because the only time anybody really, any belt changes hands is on a pay-per-view.
Yeah, I think if we look back in the last 7 or 8 months, the only title that's ever changed on a weekly show was the Intercontinental title. Other than that, you got the U.S. title. I think the last time that changed on a regular TV show was when Rusev won it off Sheamus on Main Event. And even that was only on the network, and that was at 9:15 or 9:30 on a random Tuesday night. If you don't make these titles obtainable on a random weekly show like a Monday or a Thursday on SmackDown or Raw, you've completely devalued the whole idea of people tuning in every week. And that's why you kind of see viewership drop, especially when you get to matches like Adrian Neville versus John Cena on Raw. You knew Adrian Neville wasn't going to win that title, although it was a damn good match, and I'd rate it as one of the top Raw matches of the year. You still knew that John Cena wasn't going to leave without that title.
Yeah, and it's sad because you do want a reason to tune in, and because if you watch Raw every week, there's literally nothing good that's going to come out of it besides storyline development, and even that is weak at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's an awkward silence, but I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There's not much to develop on from there. I mean, there's enough guys who can be in the title hunt picture if you, as a creative, can decide to expand your title hunt picture. Just look at Lucha Underground. I mean, as we said earlier, you got Hernandez against Prince Puma, but also you have Johnny Mundo and Alberto El Patron waiting in the wings, and enough guys nipping at their heels to where you can have a convincing storyline for the next month and a half. Where in WWE, you see, oh, no, Seth Rollins has it, so he's not going to lose it until a major pay-per-view, because that wouldn't be best for business.
Well, we're at, 52 minutes almost, so what do we want to... Is there anything else we need to cover?
I mean, the sad part is after Raw and SmackDown, what we see is Dean Ambrose looks strong as hell, so that means he's probably not going to win the title, even though I think he should at Payback.
So, going into Payback, is everybody still sticking with Seth Rollins?
I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say Dean Ambrose, and as much as I sound like a mark when I say that, I feel like that's best for storyline. If anybody other than Seth Rollins holds the title, then I feel like just maybe Dean Ambrose, especially if it's going to be a hot potato thing. That'd be a good thing for him to have and lose quickly.
Well, I was thinking also that they could give it to Roman Reigns at this point, because now, a lot of people were looking at the build-up of Roman Reigns as too strong because of the fact that he was going to go over Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Now you have him thrust into a fatal four-way. He doesn't need to pin the champion. and he's not going to go over Brock Lesnar. So you could potentially give the belt to Roman Reigns, even if it's for a short time until Elimination Chamber.
Yeah, I still have to... As much as I could see Roman Reigns winning it, I'd say he's number 2 most likely, but I have to stick by my prediction. I'm still going with Seth Rollins. I still think Seth Rollins' reign does have legs. I mean, you can still have Dean Ambrose chasing Seth Rollins while Dean holds the Money in the Bank briefcase. I do think that's one way you can go with it. I mean, there's plenty of other contenders. Not all necessarily ones we'd like to see, but there are plenty of wrestlers that are narratively lined up to take a crack at him, so I do think that's the direction they're going to go with it.
Let's save our final predictions on that match, because as Seth, you said, we're hitting 52, 53 minutes on this. We don't want to go too long. Let's just quickly, I'm going to run down the card, and I want each of you guys to give me your prediction on who's going to win each match. So far we have the pre-show match. We have the Meta Powers of Curtis Axel and Macho Mandow against the Ascension. Who gets the nod here?
Axel and Sandow.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. That's probably the perfect way, because, I mean, Macho Mandow is the most over of the 3. Curtis Axel, probably second, just based on the fact that the Ascension people forget they're even in the WWE.
Which is unfortunate, because I would like to see the Ascension be salvaged in the way that the New Day was. We talked about that for the show, the fact that the New Day sort of really got over because everybody hated them. And really that's where the Ascension was, where they could have just rolled with it. The whole reason they needed to be hated, and that's exactly what they were. So I think the Ascension could be salvaged. So honestly, I would like to see the Ascension win, but I know that it's going to go to Axel and Sandow.
Yeah, I could see the Ascension win for that reason, but honestly, I'm not sure that Axel and Sandow have enough heat as baby faces together as a team to get the Ascension as over as they'd need to be. So I do think it'll be Axel and Sandow.
Yeah, I think Axel and Sandow, with the Ascension getting a bump out of the fact that this adds heat to their characters. Moving on from that, we have Naomi and Tamina, which is a new match, against the Bella Twins, Brie and Nikki Bella. Who wins that match?
I got to go with Tamina and Naomi, just because I feel like they're on pace to get that push right now, simply because Paige is gone and there's a vacancy there, so you do need to fill that.
I agree. If the Bellas go over, there's really no plausible contenders for them left, and you either put Naomi over as a strong contender as she has been, or there is a chance to have Tamina pushed as a monster heel right here. So I'd rather see them go that direction with it than pushing Naomi. Honestly, I don't think Naomi is as capable of having a run at the top as they've tried to give her. So I would like to see them do something fresh and go with Tamina. But I do think that team takes it.
I agree. So next up we have Ryback against Bray Wyatt. We have the Feed Me More against the Eater of Worlds. Who takes that?
I would like to say Bray Wyatt, because to me it feels like he's been getting the short end of the stick on a lot of feuds. So I think it kind of sucks, because either way, you have a guy that is getting buried that shouldn't be getting buried. And I want to see Bray Wyatt get the push more than I want to see Ryback get the push.
Yeah. This feels like a filler feud to keep Bray strong and give him something to do for the month. But on the off chance that they are making a multi-month feud out of it, in that case I'd expect to see Ryback win the first one, but I don't really see them going that direction with it, so I think Bray goes over.
Personally, I see Bray Wyatt, he gets his redemption after the match against The Undertaker. I see Bray Wyatt going over. After that, we got The New Day, which is Big E and Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods against Tyson Kidd and Cesaro in a 2 out of 3 falls match. Who walks out with the tag team titles, guys?
I take The New Day.
Yeah, I have to say The New Day. I mean, I don't see that title getting hot-shotted back to the team that the New Day won it off of. I don't think they're going to go that far to give Cesaro and Kid their credibility back. I think the New Day needs that credibility more, so I am picking them.
Bill, I want a hot shot off that because I agree 100%. The New Day need that extra bump, and Tyson Kidd and Cesaro, they've already had that bump, and as I've rumored before, I really think Tyson Kidd and Cesaro are heading for a breakup. That could be an interesting way moving forwards, but we still have yet to see how that pans out. Next up, Dolph Ziggler against Sheamus, which is a rematch from Extreme Rules. Dolph Ziggler got the heads up on the first try. Who gets it this time around?
Taking Sheamus, because Sheamus is going to have to, make himself look strong, and I think it's time for Sheamus to launch himself up a little bit higher, and he is going to be in that Intercontinental title picture.
Yeah, I think Sheamus gets his win back. I mean, they clearly want his power level to be high up there. I'm thinking that they want to be able to basically elevate him into the main event scene whenever they need him, basically as a utility player. I wish they'd use Ziggler for that role, but that seems to be the one they have chalked out for Sheamus, so yep, it's a Sheamus win, I'm pretty sure.
I agree 100%. I think this is Sheamus' time to reign because I think, and I'm sure we'll get into this if we have another podcast Monday, I think Sheamus is going to be our new IC title holder. So I think this is his launching pad. After that, we got King Barrett against Neville, which is another rematch from the Extreme Rules pre-show. Who goes over here?
I take Barrett.
Yeah, I'm thinking Barrett goes over. I mean, Neville is basically bulletproof at this point. His moveset is going to keep him over regardless, and Barrett as King of the Ring also needs the credibility, so I'm going with him.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Bill, you hit it right on the head right there. King Barrett, he needs that push moving forwards, and Neville is bulletproof. He really can't do anything to ruin his character. He's putting on, 4.5, 5-star matches on a Raw. So you really can imagine, even if he loses in a drawn-out 9-10 minute match, I mean, you can't really look at Neville as being a bad loser. So there's really nothing you can do to ruin him. So after that, we got John Cena against Rusev. I know we hit on this earlier and we mentioned it. Who walks out with the U.S. title? Is it our can't give up guy, or is it our champion Russian protege?
Rusev's got to stay strong.
Yep, Rusev all the way. Typically, John Cena being John Cena, you'd think there's always that chance that he goes over pointlessly, but with the way things have shaken out recently, I don't think that's as much of a factor. And Rusev, with the teasing of him turning on Lana, I think that gives them an out to make John Cena quit, so I think that's the direction they go with it.
Yeah, like you said, I think Lana factors into this a lot, but I think Lana actually plays against John Cena, and I think Lana finally joins back against Rusev and gives Rusev an advantage. Who knows what that'll actually be, but I think Lana is the game changer of this match, and it goes in Rusev's favor. So from that, move on to the main event, and this is how we're going to close off the show. Seth Rollins, who's your champion, against Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and Seth Rollins, who walks out of the arena in Baltimore, Maryland, with the WWE title.
Well, you got all four of these guys are deserving of the title. You got Rollins, who's had the title since WrestleMania. You got Dean Ambrose, who is building his character very well. He's over with the crowd. You got Roman Reigns, that's ready for... I think he's ready now for the push. And then you got Randy Orton, who, is always there to possibly pick up the title. But for me, if I'm predicting something, I say Seth Rollins, if I had to say somebody. But I would not mind if they gave it to Roman Reigns for a short duration.
Yeah, I have to say Seth Rollins here. The way they've booked him ever since he won the title is having the odds stacked against them, and he still overcomes them through underhanded tactics like a weaselly little John Cena pretty much, and I think that holds true through Sunday.
In my ideal booking, I see for the foreseeable future that WWE title being a little bit of a hot shot based on the fact you got Payback coming up Sunday. You got Elimination Chamber 2 weeks after that, and Money in the Bank 2 weeks after that pay-per-view. So I see it going to somebody who won't be damaged if he loses the title on Sunday, and then somebody else who won't be damaged if he has to give up that title even quick after his reign. I see Dean Ambrose taking that title, and I know that's kind of a hot take to take in this wrestling community, but I think Dean Ambrose is the kind of guy who can take a title at Payback, carry it for 2 weeks, lose it at Elimination Chamber, and only enhance his character. So I see out of the three guys, I mean, you got Randy Orton, who's a guy who you can take and leave in any given feud. He's a guy who matters and doesn't matter at the same time. You have Roman Reigns, who if you're going to build him as a Superman, you can't give him the title and take it right off of him. That doesn't really fit his gimmick. Dean Ambrose is the kind of guy who can take the title on one given night, and then you can take it from him the next night, and that just adds to his character. So I think if anybody other than Rollins walks out on Sunday night as the title, it's going to be Dean Ambrose. That's just my view.
It's a good point, especially with Elimination Chamber coming up when it's really, really up in the air, more so than at a Fatal 4-Way. But with that, we have had a relatively long podcast, so if you're still with us, thank you so much. We always have fun doing it, so the longer we can do it, the more fun it is for us, realistically. But we want to try and optimize it to the point where it's a little shorter. But tonight, we were stretching it out because we were hoping Gary would probably show up, but, well, probably not show up, I should say. But either way, thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter at SCirclePodcast. Like us on Facebook to keep up with us and all kinds of news from pretty much every promotion. We'll probably get into GF Global Force or whatever the hell it is coming up soon as it starts to take shape. And we'll see you next time.
Same.